Always glad to have you with us, and always appreciate if you share this with other people. If you think it's benefit to you, might be benefit to others. Again, we just are trying to keep us moving forward in our journey of recovery, and it's a difficult journey, but it is a journey that is so well worth it, and we hope we can continue. I hope each and every one of you can continue to stay on the journey. We're going to have our moments, we're going to have our relapses, but at the end of the day, we can make it. And we can do this because of God's love for us, for the knowledge and skills of support groups and professionals, but it can be done. But sometimes you don't think it will, or it can happen, but it does. And just think about it again, just for a moment, just step back and think about a rich, full, meaningful life. That you wake up most days ready to go. You feel good about what you're doing, what you're going to be doing that day. You have friends, you have relatives, you have healthy connections with them. You're living your life not a prisoner to addictive thinking and addictive behaviors, but you are living in concert with God, with your values, all those things. It can be done. It takes time. And one of the things we always talk about is that the beauty of recovery is that once you are on your journey to recovery, you're probably a better person than you were before you ever started the addictions. So anyway, I know it's hard for some of you to believe where you're at right now, but for some of you who've been on the road a while, you know what I'm talking about. So today we're going to talk about Job again a little bit. We're going to use Job as the way to talk about this. So what my title is, God's love is real, our toxic shame is not real. Again, Dr. Joe May in his book, Addiction and Grace, has the greatest line in there. He says, the biggest myth that we live is that we see ourselves as unworthy, unlovable, not valuable. If you think about that, that is so true. But the problem is when we become addicted, we loathe ourselves. And a lot of times we become addicted because of how much we loathe ourselves. There's so many of us have such hard stories about childhood, and some of us have so many subtle, not so obvious stories of abandonment as children. When we were developing ourselves and we come to see ourselves as the problem, we came to see ourselves as the problem. And then we carry that into our adulthood. We let perfectionism dominate us. We let fear dominate us. We let the toxic shame take over. All these things, and that keeps us from that rich, full, meaningful life. And it's also a lot of times the vehicles that keep us addicted to what we're doing now. So Psalms 103. God makes everything come out right. He puts victims back on their feet. He showed Moses how he went about his work, opened up his plans to all Israel. God is sheer mercy and grace, not easily angered. He's rich in love. He doesn't endlessly nag and scold, nor hold grudges forever. He doesn't treat us as our sins deserve, nor pay us back in full for our wrongs. Now that should be comforting to you if that's what you believe, is that God's out to get you and you deserve to be punished. You deserve not to ever have anything good happen to you because of all the bad things you've done, or because all the bad things were done to you. Either way, or maybe even so it's, the point is you can recover. That is, God does not hold grudges. So I've been reading more about Job, and what people don't realize is how much of Job actually talks about the actual creation of earth and how accurate it is. How science continues to really validate what the Bible says, or maybe I should say the Bible continues to validate what God did to create the earth. But the bigger part of it is what we have to see is that God created the earth for us to live on it because he loves us. It wasn't a minute or two. It took time. Dr. He Ross, who I really like, he says it's probably 13 billion years it took for the earth to be created as it is today. And he continually points out all the have-tos that happened and is happening to keep the earth livable for us. It's it's way too many things have happened to not have a creator. And in some ways, I get why that's hard to believe sometimes. I mean, so the vast, vast, vast universe, and God focused on earth and created it perfectly for us to live in it. And those are just, it's so hard to really grasp that. And it's easy to doubt it. I get that. But the fact is, what I understand is a lot of astrophysicists, the people that study the planets, they tend to have a belief in God because of what they've seen, and because they get to look backwards and see all the things happening coming our way. So again, in the book of Job, it's a troubling book. It's a book that's maybe not understandable at times. But basically, Job is a man who's doing well. He's got everything. He's got a lot of material wealth. He's got healthy kids and family, and he's healthy and very righteous, very spiritual, really does many things right. And Satan goes to God and says, I promise you, if Job didn't have all these things, he wouldn't continue to be faithful to you. So that's really about this story. So God says, okay, well, I think he will. And so you can go after him, but you can't kill him. So Satan goes in, and just everything you can think of that we would just dread, be terrified of, happens to Job, all the way from him losing his health to losing his materials, wealth, to losing his entire family. I mean, it's mind-boggling what happens to Job. And there are times where Job falters a bit, and then he comes back around. And Job 38 is such a great chapter on God revealing all the work he did and all the miracles and all the extravagance of life and how he did it. And so really my point today to all of us is this myth we live of we are not worthy, we are not valuable. It's just not true. If you can come to grasp all the things that God has done to create earth and to create us, you just can't. It's just almost impossible for us to really believe that God doesn't love us and care about us. And so, I talk about this all the time. I do not care about your childhood, but I do care about how your childhood affects you today. Oh my gosh, what a great statement. That one, and of course, one day at a time. And the other one is, we are sick as our secrets. The number of people who have started to recover will tell you hiding, lying, denying, covering up family issues and secrets did more damage and harm to their families than anything else. And when they started talking about it, started realizing that they weren't the only ones, they did start to recover. So make sure you hear me. Your past trauma is very real, and it was very awful, and for many of you, ongoing. And so it's easy for us to not trust people. It's easy for us to withdraw. It's easy for us to numb our feelings. It's easy for us to get caught up in compulsive behaviors and people to salve our woundedness and our self-loathing. But I hope that what we can hear today is addiction starts with pain and addiction ends with pain. There's just no other way around it. You will never, once you become addicted, really, the only way that you'll stop being addicted is when your pain is higher because of your behaviors and using than it is to be clean and sober. And for you that are on the journey, you understand this. It's not that hard to understand. When we loathe ourselves as much as we do, it's kind of easy to see why we would get caught up in behaviors that keeps us from thinking about us and all the hurt and pain. And so what we do is we develop this thing called toxic shame, where we see ourselves as a mistake. We see ourselves as the problem. We need to blame ourselves for everything. Anything good happens, we see that as an accident. Anything bad happens, of course, there we go. We blame ourselves. I love Connor McDonegal says, toxic shame is a self-perpetuated, brutal tyranny that we do to ourselves. And the problem is it builds on itself. It continues to grow as we continue to beat ourselves up and to see ourselves as the problem. And it's just so tough. And the other thing, of course, is that what we do is we internalize the shame. We make sure that we find ways to beat ourselves up. And the problem then, of course, is with all our post-traumatic stress that we have, that it's hard for us to really see anything but the toxic shame. So how do we do it? How do we deal with toxic shame? We do it through atrophy thinking. We just beat ourselves up all the time. Our inner critic is just pounding on us, telling us how awful we are. The other is we develop this glass ceiling where we're never enough, no matter what we do. We try to be good, but we can only accept mediocrity in our lives. Anytime we rise above mediocrity, we feel uncomfortable. We'll probably sabotage things to get us back to the mediocrity. So really thoroughly average is how we see ourselves. Now the problem is, for some of us, we are overachievers. We do so much. We do everything we can to numb our pain. But at the end of the day, we still don't see ourselves as good enough. We don't see ourselves as good enough no matter what we do. We could be doing the stuff that most people only dream of, and still our shame is driving us. So the difference between a rich, full, meaningful life and a toxic shame life is we may be doing some of the same things as far as, working hard, maybe even climbing a corporate ladder or seen as respected and noble and all these things. But the difference is, in rich, full, meaningful life, we actually see ourselves as a good and decent person, and it's okay for us to be successful. Where if it's toxic shame, we're running from our ghosts. We're doing all these things for the wrong reasons. We may be doing the right things, but for the wrong reasons, and we don't have joy with that. Toxic shame is going to make sure of that. So, mediocrity or glass ceiling, atrophy or inner critic criticisms all the time we do to ourselves, and then the others, we're just never enough. It doesn't matter what we do, it's never enough. So you can see how mediocrity, never enough, and atrophy thinking really come together to be very destructive. And what we have to understand is that we are not God. We are going to make mistakes. We're going to cause problems. We're going to make things tough. And when we get addicted, we don't like this limit thing. We want to be limitless. We want to be able to drink all we want, be online as much time as we want. We can be on, YouTube Shorts for five hours, and that's not a problem. We get ourselves in bad, broken relationships, and we kill ourselves to try to make it work, and all these things. But the point is, you're human. And it's not what you've done, it's not what you haven't done, or it's not what's been done to you, it's how we interpret those things. And so for us to overcome our toxic shame and to keep us out of worthless land where we see ourselves as so worthless, so we just are terrible. What we have to do instead is we have to accept our flaws. We have to accept what we're good at. We're not great at everything, but we're certainly good at some things. We don't have to be great at everything, and we don't have to be great at anything to be loved. If we're a good and decent person, that's enough for us, because that's what God wants from us, to be a good and decent person. So we could go on and on about all this stuff, but think about the gift. So you remember we said addiction starts with pain and ends with pain? Well, let's think about the gift of powerlessness for a minute. Oh my gosh, that's a tough one, isn't it? For us that are so caught up in our trauma and our abandonment, to try to control everything, try to look for every possible contingency that could go wrong, how we could get harmed, all these things we do because that's what we saw as children. We had no control. And so, but if we can admit we're powerless, we don't have anything else to fear. We can move on. We're no longer trying to uphold false standards and images and maintain this false image about ourselves. We no longer have to be acting like we're perfect and be in control of everything. We could even get to the point where we stop justifying our actions, particularly when we do good ones. And we say, oh, it was nothing, it was a mistake, I'm sure, blah, blah, blah. And the other thing about powerlessness is it can humble us to the core. It can bring us back to us instead of that toxic shame us. By feeling the pain we're trying to avoid, we free ourselves from the menacing grip and grasp of all those actions. I always think Gerald made other quote I always like of his is when he talks about when we become addicted, we become clingy and graspy. And that doesn't work very well, particularly in relationships when we're clingy and graspy. We know that's not going to happen and work out in the right ways. So we have to become aware of what we're doing here. We have to become aware of the effects we've had of the stuff in our lives and people around us. I mean, some of you've had some very traumatic lives, but also for you that have been more on the abandonment side and child neglect side, don't diminish that. That's what we tend to do. We go, well, I don't know, I had that bad. I didn't have that many bad things happen, but I never felt valuable or worthy and all that. My parents never had time for me. They were always working or whatever the case is. And so we just have to figure out ways to get shame and inadequacy out of the center of our life and replace it with hope, faith, love, connection, all those things. And I think the other thing we have to think about again is we're sick as our secrets. When we can start sharing those secrets, a lot of the power goes away from all the stuff that happened to us. And one of the things I always tell people, and I hope this helps you, is that I always tell people to visualize yourself as a mentor one day. The people that come to NorthStar, some of them really have become either sponsors or mentors. They would have never believed this a few years back that they'd be here. But through all their recovery, their acceptance of them, their acceptance of not being perfect and awesome and all those things they thought they had to be, they now can just be them. They can be satisfied with who they are, continue to work on themselves to get even better, but they can live without the scourge of toxic shame and perfectionism and all those things. So one thing, let's think about that for a little bit, is think about what would it be like if a couple years from now you were seen as a mentor to someone else, that you were there for them to help them get through their life. That's pretty outstanding if you think about it. So I hope that that's something that will help you move forward here. And of course, again, we can continue to talk about this over and over and over, but the fact is you have to get with support groups to get you out of this. You need to get with professionals and know what they're doing on recovery. You need to spend time with God, even if it's a couple minutes. Like I've said in the past, research shows 3 minutes. One research showed 3 minutes minimum, another showed 13 minutes, but either way, neither one's very long. If we spent that time in pure silence, meditation with God, it would make your life better. Then we need to live ourselves with gratitude. But be grateful for things going on in your life. Even some of it's not good. Realize think back on your life when you've had very difficult times, and you look back now and see that those may have been some good days for you to help you get better. And the other thing we got to keep remembering is recovering from trauma is you have to talk about it, acknowledge it, become aware of it, and the impact it's had on you, or is having on you, probably more likely. And then over time, you need to assign something good to the trauma. And trust me, again, I know that's so hard to do. But you can't turn the clock back. You can't go back and undo the trauma. So you really got a choice. Are you going to let the trauma destroy you, or are you going to let it make you better? And it's hard, I know. So I don't ever want anybody to hear that I think it's easy. So I just hope that if we can get to the point where we eventually see the stuff we went through as a child and as adults too, that have driven us to be addictive, that we can start taking care of it, stopping, getting our brains back, getting us back. We start connecting with other people. We connect with God, connect with ourselves. We can have a rich, full, meaningful life. I always like reading this. This is I think a great definition of a rich, full, meaningful life, and this is from the movie Ad Astra. Brad Pitt is the star in that, and this is the end of the movie when he's gone from being very alone and isolated to now connected. I am steady and calm. I sleep well, and I have no bad dreams. I am active and engaged. I am aware of my surroundings and those that are in my immediate sphere. I am attentive. I'm unsure of the future, but I am not concerned. I am focused on the essentials and at the exclusion of all else. I will rely on those closest to me and I will share their dreams and burdens as they share mine. I will live and I will love. And I'll add to this, and I hope that you will develop your faith, grow your faith in God to really understand that He's here for us. So we need to have self-compassion. We have to understand we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things wrong. We're going to be hurtful. We're going to be hurt. It's all part of life. We have to face our shame. We have to disconnect from the thoughts of being loathsome and awful and terrible, and revise our thinking to see that we are valuable and worthy. And we can do this. We can overcome all these things. So I hope this has been helpful to you. Again, the biggest myth we live is believing that we are worthless, unlovable, unworthy. It's just not true. God created this planet. It took Him billions of years to do it. He did it because there was one focus, and that was love, and love of us as He created us. I know it can be hard to believe sometimes, but the science certainly does suggest a creator, and the science suggests a lots of activity to make it earth, to make it for us, and all of our flaws and all of our stupidity and all of our goodness and all of our love. But God created all this for us. So you are not worthy, unworthy. You are not unlovable. You are great the way you are. We just got to get the trauma and abandonment issues out of your life and turn those into making you stronger. So thank you for joining me. And we meet on Wednesdays and Fridays at 6:30 here at Walnut Grove Baptist Church. Of course, we have the online that you're watching. We also have our regular church service at 10:15 on Sundays. So I'd love to have you come. We feed you. We have full meals. We have child care for you. So there's really, we try to take care of everything we can think of for you so that you can come and join us. And I promise you, NorthStar is a very supportive group. You're not going to be judged. You're not going to be made fun of. You're going to be welcomed and loved, and everybody's going to be happy you're there. So I just thank you again for joining me today. And if you ever want to get a hold of me, you can email me at csimpson@wgva.church. Again, thanks for joining me today, and look forward to meeting you or see you.